My very first video I ever made about guitar, I made a video where I told the story of my first guitar. You know, I thought it'd be pretty interesting for me to tell the story of, this guitar. As you could tell, the lighting was bad, the camera was all over the place, and my playing? Well, I've improved a lot since then. Actually, in that video, I had mentioned that once I got better at this whole YouTube thing, that I would maybe remake this video. Maybe once I get more experience with this whole YouTube thing, I might go back and redo it. So, I think it's time for me to remake that video. Not just because that I'm better at this whole YouTube thing, but also because this guitar still means just as much to me as it did then, and honestly, maybe even more now. Alright, so this is my 2014 Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro, and man, I love this thing. I got it the summer of 2018 and I played it almost every single day for years. The frets are all worn down and it's a little beat up now, and honestly it's kind of aged with me. Every scratch and scuff on this guitar tells a different story. There really is a fun parallel because the more beat up this guitar gets, the more beat up I do too. In that original video, this guitar didn't have these big dents in the front, and I also didn't have these ugly ears. How this guitar got this big dent in the front here is, I'll never forget it. I was sitting at this very desk, and I was watching some Dokken music videos, and I just remember the guitar right over there just completely ripped and just fell out of the wall and just crashed to the ground. And where I'm sitting at this chair, sitting at the desk, I can't actually see where the guitar had landed because it was kind of behind the desk. And I just remember sitting here completely frozen. I was terrified to get up and actually see if the guitar, you know, had broken the headstock or something. And if that would have happened, I would have been completely destroyed. And so I was just sitting here frozen, and trust me, it was a really, really hard fall, so I was mortified. But eventually I got up and I saw that the guitar was like sitting face down on the wall. I saw there was a bunch of scratches on the back that weren't there before. And I remember seeing that the headstock wasn't broken, and I was so relieved. And as I picked it up and turned it over and I see this little scratch in the front, I was so relieved that the headstock wasn't broken. And though it may sound a little weird, I love every blemish that this guitar has, and the same reason that I love my ears. It's a sentiment that things are being used. I've put in so much work in MMA and wrestling my entire life that these ears are kind of like a trophy, in the same way that all the scratches on this guitar show that it's played a lot. And the more beat up a guitar is, unless it's relic, usually the more it was played. So the story of this guitar starts in the winter of 2018. It was right in the middle of my wrestling season, and out of nowhere my parents approached me and told me that they lost their job and we had to move. And the next few months were a really, really crappy time for my family. I don't know if any of you guys have moved to a completely different location, but it's tough. But I was able to finish up the school year and say bye to the rest of my friends. But after that, we packed up our stuff and moved to Richmond, Virginia. We moved from a 4-bedroom house to a 1.5-bedroom apartment, and yeah, it was really crammed in there. I remember my room was basically a storage unit with a mattress in the corner, and there was so much stuff in the room that I had to like walk sideways just to get to my mattress that was just sitting on the floor in the corner. And in the front of that room, there was a card table that my mom got at like a garage sale back in the 90s. And sitting next to that card table was a cheap Strat copy that my dad bought years ago whenever he wanted to learn how to play guitar, and he never really did. So that guitar sat in the family room of our old house unplayed for about 10 years. So whenever we unpacked all of our stuff into that little apartment, that guitar happened to be one of the only things that wasn't covered in boxes. And after moving somewhere completely new, I had nothing to do. I didn't have any friends, I didn't have any job, sports didn't start up yet, and I couldn't even drive at the time, so I really had nothing to do all day. So after sitting there bored for a couple days and seeing that guitar every single day, I just thought, why not? So I picked up that guitar and looked up on YouTube how to play guitar. So that's really how it all started. My dad got this guitar here in around 2009 for about 125 bucks, which back then wasn't very good, but nowadays you can get a guitar for a lot better for that price. But this guitar really is what started everything. Looking back, this guitar wasn't actually as bad as I thought it was. And like a lot of beginners, I kind of fell for that YouTube mindset where you kind of think that you have to have the best gear to sound good. But in all honesty, I really just sucked because I was brand new and that's why I didn't sound good. But I learned that much later. So I thought I needed a new guitar, so my dad and I started going guitar hunting. And the more I learned about guitar and what guitars are and the differences, the more I kind of started to fall in love with the Gibson SG and Les Paul shapes. Back then I wasn't really much of a Strat or Fender guy, but I definitely have grown an appreciation for them now. So my mom hadn't moved down to Virginia yet with us, so it was just my dad and I. And one day, him and I ended up at this bookstore called Second and Charles. We knew there would be guitars there, but that's not exactly why we went. We were kind of just killing time, really. But as we walk in the store, I look to my right, and I see the guitar wall. and on the top rack, I see this guitar here. And I don't really know how to explain it, but the guitar just spoke to me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for days after. And over the course of the next few weeks, my dad and I were looking for different churches, and every time we'd go out for a different church, I would beg my dad, please, can we go to 2nd and Charles? I just want to see that guitar again. I barely knew how to play guitar at the time, but I was obsessed. I wanted to hold that guitar again, even for a few minutes, and maybe play the few notes I did know how to play, which there weren't many. And after me finding that guitar, we ended up going to a few guitar centers in Sam Ash's, and I played some SGs and a few other Epiphone Les Pauls, but none of them spoke to me the same way that one did. There really was just something about that one. And after a few months of saving up, which, by the way, during a move is very hard to do, but my dad and I bought it. I, of course, was like 14 or 15, so I didn't have very much money, so he actually helped me out with it, which I'm super, super thankful for. Without him helping me with this guitar here, I probably wouldn't have ended up with all of these guitars now, because I wouldn't have fallen in love with it the same. My dad took a few pictures of me from that day, and I don't look very happy, but I was ecstatic. And for some reason, I went through like a little tank top phase, and we don't really talk about that. But man, this guitar has something special. And in taking notes for this video, I remembered that back in the day, I actually went in to trade this Strat copy in for that guitar to get some of the money taken off. And I'm so, so glad they didn't, because I really think it's important to keep your very first guitar. Regardless if it's not your first real guitar, I still think you'll regret selling it. Because even though I don't really play this guitar at all, it's still special because that's the guitar that really got things going, but this is the one that started it all. Does this one mean as much to me as that Les Paul does? No, it doesn't at all, but that doesn't mean it's not special. So if at all possible, I do recommend keeping your first guitar. I'm sure we've all experienced that honeymoon phase that you get whenever you buy something new. You know that feeling where it's exciting while it's new, but it kind of fades over time? That's never happened with this guitar. Even though after years and years have gone by, every time I pick up this guitar, I still kind of have that same spark I had whenever I was 15 years old. And yeah, I have other guitars now. I have a Gibson SG, I have a much nicer Gibson Les Paul Custom, so I'll be honest, this guitar doesn't really get played much anymore. And that's not because I don't love it. I think just over time I've collected guitars that happen to do the job that this guitar does better. They sound different, they fit the style I play a little bit better, and they're overall just better instruments. But this guitar is really the one that started everything. Sure, I learned my first few notes on that Strat copy, but this is the one that really took things off for me. This is the first guitar I ever had to like work for to earn, and it was so rewarding once I got it. Every time I take it off this wall here, I'm kind of hit with a wave of nostalgia. It's like this muscle memory taking me back to like when I was 15 years old. You could see in the back here where the finish is kind of worn down from where you could tell I played it the most. And in making this video, I'm actually running into the same issue I had the first time I made this video. And that's that every time I pick up this guitar, I just end up playing it. I just get distracted. Robert Baker, who's one of my favorite guitar YouTubers, made a video way back in the day about how to tell if your guitar is a good guitar. And one of his points in that video is that it shouldn't really matter if the guitar is plugged in or not. If you could just sit here and play it acoustically, it wouldn't really make a difference if you plugged it in. That's not to say it doesn't sound any different, obviously, but it'll give you the same feel. You don't have to plug it in to get everything you want out of the instrument. I hope that point makes sense to you the same way it makes sense to me, but this guitar does that exactly for me. And this guitar really does mean the world to me. Not just because it was my first like real guitar, but because it kind of takes me back and reminds me where I started. And by extension, how far I've come. And again, I might not play it as much as I would like to, but every time I do, it really does remind me of why I fell in love with guitar as a whole in the first place. And if 8th grade me could see where I'm at now with all the guitars I have, the quality of the videos, how much better I've gotten at playing, I really do think I'd be proud of myself. And I'm not trying to get all sappy, but I think that's something that's really important. Because as I mentioned, that time in my life was not an easy time. And just to think that if I was looking at myself all these years later, and that I would actually be proud of what I become, it means a lot to me. And if you've seen the original video I made about this guitar all those years ago, I want to thank you guys for sticking around. I'd like to think that this updated version does this guitar story a better justice, and also show my updated perspective on things. But that's about it for this video. If you guys liked this video, feel free to click like, and if you loved it, and you want to see more content from me, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.